episode 3. We're not cutting.
No.
Episode 3, rules with Jay and other stuff.
All right, dude, it's your deal. You're up 2-0.
We are we're flying through this Go Fish tournament here. Like I definitely think I'm better at games when there's nothing to win. Like when I play poker for no money,
you're great.
I'm killing it. But once there's like money involved,
you overthink it.
Now, do you deal 1 card at a time or 7 cards at a time?
No, 1 card at a time each, yeah.
Cowboy rules.
Well, that's a funny thing. Bringing that up is the adding some sort of charitable or some sort of they're playing to win something was important, not only for myself, but also for Jay.
I think we got 7.
Yeah, because we wanted them to play the game legit. I wanted to show off the board game that the publishers graciously provided without movie magic or editing, right?
Yeah,
We weren't really trying to tell a story, but because it was all just kind of for fun, adding that charitable element where the comics are playing for a charity means they want to compete, and that's what I think we were trying to encourage.
Yeah, and we wanted to have the dynamic, well, because, at the end of the day, it is something that we want people to watch, so there needs to be a reason that something's happening more than just people playing games.
Of course. And
having the charity element really did make them. Plus, if you have a group of people who play games, they're going to want to win.
Exactly.
It is that funny scenario where they're not going to it's not cutthroat, but they are going to want to win for their charity.
Yep.
And
yeah, it just sort of made it a little bit more. There was something at stake. Yeah. And I'm not saying you can't play a board game and there's nothing at stake, because most friends who play board games, they're not competing.
No.
But yeah, it just kind of makes it a little more exciting for the audience. And, it's
for sure.
It's also nice that we could afford to even just give a little bit of money to good charities.
Yeah. And that is, that's always an added bonus, and it definitely, who's going first here? Sorry.
I think I get to go first because you won. Didn't we do that last time?
Loser's ball thing. Okay. So you start off.
You got any 4s?
Go fish.
All right.
Do you have any aces?
Go fish.
I'm gonna start from the top.
There you go. What about 5s?
Oh my God, you're always saying what I'm about to ask.
I can see your cards. Do you have any 9s?
What happens if I lose all the cards in my hand?
You draw from the deck when it's your turn to go.
1 at a time?
Yep.
Wow.
You got any 2s?
Go fish. Do you have any jacks?
Nope. Yeah, to me, the most important thing, and I think you and I talked about this the most, was allowing Jay to sort of be the game sort of like commissioner as far as are we playing it legit? Are we following the rules? Are we representing those games in a way a publisher like himself would appreciate?
Yeah, and that's like the logistics of running the game properly, filming it, making sure everyone knows what's happening, also to be somewhat entertaining.
Yes.
There was a lot, like we were saying last week, like we were saying is that it's, we're playing Go Fish.
Right.
And there's so much here where you're like, do you play? Do you talk?
Mm-hmm.
And there are rules that you have to follow. Now, that was the question I was kind of touching on last time and I'm curious because we are going to be talking with Jay later on in this episode.
Yep.
I would like to know, so to me, rules are what separate amateurs from pros in the board game world. Because if you show me Summit, it looks to me so overwhelming and complicated,
right? Okay,
that I would need to play with people who knew it, who could really break it down
and explain it to you.
Where King of 12 is a card game,
right?
And you're essentially there's a basic concept, and not that King of 12 is like a beginner game, but I think that rules are what, first of all, as a game designer or publisher or creator, you want to create that world and you want it to be your world, I'm assuming, your universe.
I also assume this is something we asked Jay, because
that's what I'm saying. As an outsider, it's very like Monopoly. Who decided the rules of Monopoly?
Right.
Was it like a bunch of people in the 1800s. Like,
no, it was likely somebody created the game, like the person who created Jenga and the person who created this and, that kind of thing.
But think about how complicated Jenga could have been.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right? Like they could have made Jenga, which eventually ended up happening. Like there was like sex Jenga or whatever that had like dirty things on it. And you're supposed to do like charades with pull a stick out.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think the reason board games are kind of exploding, I think partly is the pandemic. And this is something we talked to Jay about. Yeah. Right? Because I mean, you couldn't have big parties. You couldn't go to a bar or a restaurant or whatever. Like, so you hung out and played board games. Tons of people played board games.
For sure. It's definitely
and, I mean, it's huge in Europe, like especially like Germany and places like that where there's massive conventions and awards and all these crazy things. Like it's an entire world unto its own, which I really knew nothing about, which fascinated me. Yeah. And I think you're kind of inquisitive that way too.
Well,
right?
My knowledge in games in general really is, we're talking, I had PlayStation 2, like PlayStation 3.
You're talking video games.
Well, I'm saying like that's where it all stopped. It's probably like the Super Nintendo era, right?
Right.
I get the basic concept. And for me, where I know that there's like, as a comedian, right, I feel that there's a path that every comic takes where you're performing and you're like, okay, let's say there's 100 people in the audience. Yeah. In my mind, 40 of those people maybe want to be there. Right. The 60 are dragged out by the 40. Right. And there's a fork in the road where do you please those 60% that, you'll probably get work. You'll probably, you'll be doing corporates, but no one's really going to remember you because you're just the guy that for that night. Yep. Or do you focus on that 40%
and build a following?
Build a following because they like comedy. And that is, I feel like, a path that every comic takes. And I think with games or with like Super Nintendo, it was very side scroller, you shoot, you jump, you bounce off things. And then I remember Metal Gear was like the first kind of game on PlayStation where I was like, this is more of a story. And then I look at board games and I'm like, I'm watching Metal Gear. Right. If I have to like read these cards, like this to me was like,
right, I see.
Where my mind is like, I cannot.
So you feel you learned the ability to sort of play and figure out a game through video games, and now board games make it a little easier to understand.
Well, it's just like the games that had, first of all, I think this relates in video games and board games, is the controller. Super Nintendo had 4 buttons on the top, or 4 on the pad, 2 on the top. So you could only have so many combinations. Right. So when PlayStation 2 came out, you had the 4, then you had the 4 on the top, and now you added 2 other buttons, which now create more combinations. And you can use this, you have to hold this down and this and that. And I'm like, I just want to like press A and B and move on. And I look at board games and it is there like and this is like, why I'm excited to talk to Jay about how he comes up with even mind management. Like that game looks very like it took like not complicated. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and what you're kind of talking about is what the board gamers are aiming for is the playability, right? Yeah. Because if you play mind management 10 times with your friends and now you figured out a pattern or you figured out how you can win every time.
That's the
right?
thing.
Then the game is boring and obsolete and it goes on the shelf.
And not to go back to McDonald's, not to go back to Monopoly. But Monopoly, in my mind, the secret is you just get Boardwalk. Right? Like that's one of the things.
Well, that's one of the things, but because there's so many different things and so many combos and so many whatever, that's like sort of the base model of like say Summit, where like every card is different and everything
every
is
possibility,
different. So it just
thousands of combinations.
That's the thing. Hundreds of thousands, which makes it easier to play again and again and again and again, right?
And this is what I was trying to figure out is like the amount of trial and error that has to happen where you really, ideally, I'm assuming as a board game designer, publisher, creator, you don't want someone to find something that you never did through testing.
Exactly.
Right? Because that is...
No, the testing is insane.
There should not be any loopholes in your game, right? There shouldn't be like, oh, wait a second, what happens if I play these 3 cards and now I'm invincible or
Right.
whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And that's also something that, like, when talking about first episode, when we're like, oh, it was going to be like a game within a game.
Yeah.
When Jay and I were trying to figure out, and we're trying to walk through, and I'm trying to explain it to you and to Christoph, and everyone would pop up and say, what if this happens? And then you're like, oh. And then that little thing, just because of this combination, turns it into this. And so, yeah, all of those things need to be thought about.
And
right?
and that is like, I always would joke around about, you look at like instructions on building a desk, right? And it's like it's like, do they get the dumbest people to build a desk to say like what not to do?
Right.
And then they're like, do not do this, do not eat the wood, do not do this,
Right.
do not do this.
Yeah.
And then they're like, do they cancel out what not to do, or do they try and build it in weird ways? Like, that's why with a game, I'm very curious to know how do you come up, like, it's obviously like a cause and effect. Like, you play a card, which, by the way, is it my turn or yours?
I think it's your turn, dude.
Do you have any jacks?
No, not even close.
I asked you that.
Yeah, you got any 8s?
Nope, go fish. Do you have any queens?
Yeah.
Thank God. Do you have any 7s?
Nope. Do you have any 5s?
Go fish.
Yeah, I mean, comparing putting together a desk and building a board game, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same way.
Well, I'm talking instructions and
Instructions
rules, right?
and rules.
Like,
well, and the funny thing is, and Jay can elaborate on this, is from what he said, there are people who you can go to, and it is their job
to just destroy your game.
Not even destroy your game. No, to streamline your rules.
Yeah.
So that the language is such that you can't read it this way or this way. This is it. If A, then B.
That's like a grant writer who knows how to like speak that language.
So he said there are people, and that's their job. They edit and tweak down, because also when you open a game, if you get a book this thick and it's got 400, you're never going to want to play it.
And that's what I was trying to get at, where it's like, that's the divide, right? Where there are people possibly like Ted or Jay
who are right into reading
like,
it.
oh, the thicker the better. You know, I want this like Bible of a book that has rules, and there's like a sense of like pride when you learn how to play this very complicated game that maybe 500 people know how to play.
Yeah.
But it is something that there is that divide.
Right.
Is it my turn?
I believe so.
Do you have any queens?
No. Goldfish.
Goldfish.
You have any 9s?
Go fish. Do you have any 8s? Yeah. This is a game about memory.
Yeah, a bunch about memory.
Do you have any jacks?
Go fish. Like, I'll take your 7s.
I just picked up a 7.
Oh, sweet. You got any kings? Oh, I'm on a roll, dude. That's 2 for 2. How about any 2s?
Go fish. Do you have any 8s?
Nope. Any 5s?
Go fish. Do you have any queens?
No, go fish.
Oh, I picked up a queen.
Oh, lucky.
Do you have any aces?
Go fish. I don't know how. I have 100 cards in my hand. You have any jacks? All of them? No, just 2. All right. What else do you need? You got a 10? You got a 9?
Go fish.
Ooh, I really need a 9 right here.
Do you have any 5s? Thank you. Do you have any 8s?
No. You have any kings?
Go fish. Do you have any 6s?
I have 1 6, Mark.
Thank you. Do you have any aces?
No, go fish. All right, I'm going to go on a run here, buddy. You got any 4s?
Go fish.
Seriously?
Do you have any 8s?
No. You have any aces?
Didn't I ask you that?
You did, but I just picked one up.
Oh, my God.
All right, so now I need a 10.
Go fish. Do you have any 3s?
Yeah.
Just 1?
Yep.
Oh. Do you have any 6s?
No, go fish. Do you have any 7s?
Go fish.
Oh! Winner. Do you have any kings?
Go fish.
King. No.
Do you have any aces?
Suck it.
Yeah. Do Do you have any sixes?
No. You have any threes?
Just about to ask you that.
Do you have any jacks?
Go fish. Do you have any? Oh, where did you get that from?
So I picked up a king when you said go fish. Okay. I got rid of the 4, but it's still your turn because I wasn't fishing for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any sixes?
Go fish. Do you have any 2s?
Sweet. Just pick that up.
Do you have any 10s?
Go fish. 6?
No.
Okay.
Go fish.
Oh.
8. Jack.
Go fish. You have any 9s?
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, you got to have a 9. Oh, perfect. Okay. Do you have any 6s?
No, go fish. 6 is going to be the bottom card of that deck. It's going to be amazing. Oh, fuck. Okay.
So what happens
So
now?
that goes there, right? You draw and ask.
Do you have any 4s? I just keep going?
Yeah.
Do you have any 3s? Jacks? 10 and 8. Wow.
That crushed. You got 10 and I got 3.
How did that even happen?
Again, I had all the cards, but you ended up playing last, and then it's just in order. But
Man.
yeah.
So that's 3-0.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so when we talk, some of the questions that I think I want to talk to Jay about are like, obviously his basic stuff, passions and all that, how he got into it.
Of course, yeah.
But I would be curious to know a lot about how rules are made and like what that
entails.
Yeah, because to me, that's like comedy, stand-up, they say is like, delivery and material, right? Like it's persona, like that's, you have material or you have a persona / delivery or whatever.
Timing or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, but that's all in your delivery and all that. So I'm curious to know, like, is it the flashiness of the games that make them popular? Is it the simplicity of the games?
Oh, that's excellent. That's an excellent question. I mean, I think if anything, Kickstarter was a huge help to independent board game publishers.
Oh, for sure.
In the same way, social media made it accessible for guys like you and I to make a TV show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I mean, we had some help from Bell and whatever else and some funders and sponsors and things. But I mean, 10, 15 years ago,
you're in the streets trying to sell like a board game, like a salesman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or in the same way, like you're using a camera that is, giant. It like doesn't run, like it's a huge, camcorder you're trying to make look like a movie set, whatever.
Well, I'm excited to talk to Jay, get him on. We're going to be obviously doing a lot of these interviews over Zoom and Skype or whatever. And I'm happy to give him a talk. And I guess next week we're going to be, who are we talking to?
I think we'll talk to Jay too about just the decision to, once we had to replace Ted, who become, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even we can talk about, Deanne and the other comics and, how they all came together.
Yeah, I think we have, this is now like, are we talking about Niall next week or?
I think what I wrote down, Brian.
Brian. Oh, okay. So yeah, let's talk to Jay. We'll get some talk in and we'll
see how he feels about Brian replacing Ted.
Yeah, because Brian's interesting, right? Like he wasn't in the initial group of friends, but he still plays games. And it's like when we asked him, he had to have had game knowledge because it was a last second edition.
Yeah, I mean,
and there was a lot of information that, I would be really curious to ask Brian how he mentally dealt with that.
It was funny because I didn't have Brian's number. And Ted was the one who gave me Brian's name initially. And then I sort of said to Deanne and Christoph, have you guys, and they're like, yeah, we've played with Brian before. He'd be great. So then it was a mission to get Brian. So Brian had a gig, I think, one of the nights.
Yeah.
He had a cat. He had to find someone to sit for.
Well, let's get into it all on episode 3. Is it 3?
It is 3, I think.
Well, I'm 0 for 3. I'm 3-0.
So it'll be episode 4.
So it's episode 4.
Who's keeping track, Mark?